Welcome, everyone, to People on Dating. I'm your host, Will Morales. And for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, this podcast is about the ups and downs of dating and how to navigate through it. Today, my guest is Julie Caraccio.
Yep,
Whoa.
100%.
And
Good
it's funny,
job.
Julie. I wanted to practice first, but okay, I got lucky. Thank you, Julie. Julie is available for how to declutter your life, how to simplify it, and there's obviously much, much more. So, first of all, Julie, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks so much for having me.
No, it's my pleasure. So, Julie, tell me a little bit about your story. What was that journey like to get here to today? You have a podcast. You're a coach. Everything is about decluttering. Even our relationships, I guess, we could declutter. So, tell us a little bit about yourself. What was that journey like?
Well, 1,000% on decluttering relationships. So really the catalyst to start my business was I was working, my background was in grant writing and fund development. I was raising funds for nonprofit, and I had a job in Tennessee. I was telecommuting and they went under, and I beat that out. But I was at a job and I was like, this place is crazy. So I need to get out. But I don't want to just go get another job. I want to be my own boss. So
Yeah.
kind of through the journey, I started out, don't ever change your business name. It was
Yeah.
Healing Through Organization. And I ended up changing that to Reawaken Your Brilliance, because I was interviewing body, mind, spirit. I did that, went to a studio and did that. And for me, it went more from organizing to decluttering. And with all my personal growth work, I was like, it's really about the clutter, right? But seeing clutter is so much more. People just tend to think of the physical stuff, but I
Yeah.
want people to expand what they think. So for instance, the messy desk is a roadblock to a promotion, or writing that novel you always wanted to write, or an overstuffed closet prevents a relationship from blossoming, right? So I want people to expand their view of clutter.
Yeah, it's funny because what you just hit on, when people think about declutter, it's always about things, hoarding, but when it comes to relationships, what are some of the things that we might not see when it comes to let's say a cluttering, if that makes sense, of relationships, whether it's friends, loved ones, family. If you could expand on that a little bit.
Sure. So how supportive are the people around you? We'll talk
Mm,
about romantic in a second, but you're like the people you hang out with. So if you want to say have better health, losing weight is a big goal for me, and I've done that and I'm working more on that. But if I hang out with people that don't exercise, that sit around and eat junk food all day, then I'm going to become like that, right? So being aware of that, and being aware of how supportive are your relationships, right?
yeah.
Do they say yes, you can do it, or tell you all the reasons why you can't? And then what
Mm.
baggage do we bring into a relationship? So you had a romance that didn't work out. Have you found closure with that? Have you dealt with the issues? Are you bringing them into your current relationship? That's a huge one.
Yeah. No, it's funny because, yeah, I never thought about, well, I guess maybe, maybe you do have a point, like decluttering some friends, because I think for me personally, and tell me if I'm on the right track, Julie, if there's a friend who I think is a friend and they somehow insult me in front of people, but they
Hmm.
mean it. Now, if it's a joke, then it's a joke, no problem. But if it's a personal attack, 9 out of 10 times, I'm gonna just cut that person off and say hi and bye, but just keep my distance. Would that be considered something of decluttering a relationship?
Absolutely. And that's great, because, the reality is most of us have someone that sucks in our life. And they're people that, not necessarily that you can do that, right? Because maybe you have an awful family member and you just, because of circumstances, so do what you do. So the contact is really minimal. Hey, how are you? No engagement. I always try to be polite, but it ends there. And,
Yeah.
and one of the things that we can get tripped up on is if we create a boundary, how people might try to gaslight us to not take care of ourselves, express how we feel, or have that boundary. And so that's something that I want people to be aware of. Again, are they supporting you, or they saying, oh, as someone say to me, well, he's in his 70s. So that doesn't mean that he can treat me poorly. So I'm in my 50s. What's your point? Right. And so
Mm.
being aware, how do people make excuses for others instead of saying, wow, I'm really proud of you for taking care of yourself and saying no and doing what's best for you instead of trying to do what's best for someone else.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you 100% on that. It doesn't matter the age or whatever, because if someone disrespects us, whatever, or they're they're in their 20s, or like you said, they're in their 70s. No, a disrespect is a disrespect. Declutter. That's it. Move
Yes.
on. Um, so what was it about relationships that you started noticing that we had to let go of some people and bring some people into our relationships that are going to be positive? Like you said, supportive friends. How did you notice that? Or was there a period in your time when you were younger that you started noticing, hey, you know what, I need to let go of this person. This person's not positive. What was that aha moment for you when all of a sudden now you took that from let's say like now from a business to now a personal type of relationship, if my question made sense at all.
Sure. The big aha moment for me, and I encourage people to pay attention to, is how did I feel when I was with this person? And how did I feel right afterwards? Did I feel good about myself? Was I excited to see, or did I find myself dragging? Like, oh, I've got this meeting with Sally. Ugh. How did my stomach feel? Did I feel like this pit in my stomach? Was I excited? Was I looking forward to it? Or was I pulling back? And so that was really oh, you know what? I've noticed that I don't feel so good after I hang out with her. Why is that? Let me do some reflection here and dig a little deeper and see what that's about.
you know wow. It's funny because I remember, I think for me it started like in my 20s, maybe late 20s. And when I started noticing some people that I would say weren't good for me in terms of hanging out, being in the same room, that's when I started like cutting off people and just still being friendly, still
Yeah.
being, hey, how you doing? What's going on? But they're on one side of the room, I'm on the other, you know? Um, so talk a little bit more about like your personal journey, because like I said, I find it interesting that not only do we think about it as, when we talk about decluttering about, your home or your office, but now into personal relationships, because not a lot of people talk about that. They just talk about just relationships, pluses and minuses, but cutting people off, and I hate to say that word, but unfortunately it's a fact of life. Can you talk more about that? Like you said, it's how we feel. Is there anything else that we should look for? Is it something that they say, some action? Yeah, so go ahead. I can see you.
Yeah, no,
I see
I'm
the brain.
nodding as you talk. Definitely. Do their actions match their words?
Right.
You had mentioned earlier in the conversation, like one thing I would never ever embarrass my husband in front of someone else. I would never call him out. That's one thing I've always, because when I was single, I'd observe other couples and I'd be like, oh, I'd be embarrassed if I was her partner. I can't believe they just said that with me standing there. Like I have secondhand embarrassment. And so, words matching actions. What are they saying? Like how loving, or if it's a romantic relationship, how loving or affectionate are they? Are they my biggest cheerleaders or my biggest critics?
Yeah.
Right. And instead of, I used to be a people pleaser big time. So that was something that I had to get over
Yeah. Same
because
here.
you know what? It boils down to, do I love myself? Do I feel
Yeah.
good enough? Do I feel worthy? Because when I am, then you know what? I'm going to look after me. And that doesn't mean being mean to other people or not caring, but it says, you know what? I'm not going to allow you to treat me poorly. And if you do, you're out of my life. And one thing I've been thinking before this, it's come up again and again because I am in a somewhat, it feels like a small town. And so I had someone who didn't treat me kindly. It was what it was. And I'm like, you're out of my life. I didn't make a big stink about it. There were some other things that happened. Like if you do things publicly, don't expect people to like not notice. And then I ran into this person at the doctor's office and I just was like, hey, how are you? And kept going. And they obviously texted or called someone who's like, oh, I need to smooth things over. And I was like, I just didn't respond. I'm like, no, you don't. It doesn't involve you. B, I don't know what, if you treat someone poorly, what do you expect? But it's interesting to me that it's happened more than one time. If you don't treat someone poorly, then you don't owe them anything. And again, that goes back to, I was polite. Hey, how are you? I don't owe you anything beyond that. And it's amazing to me that people think they can do that and yet expect you to still be friendly with them or still ask for a favor, whatever it is. So I just encourage people listening, stay strong, stay true to yourself, and have healthy boundaries.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember there was a buddy of mine. Uh, I was I was in between moving, so he told me, "Hey, you can stay with me until you find a place." The previous place I was in was just deteriorating to the point that I just didn't want to be there anymore. So he was nice enough to say, "Hey, just stay with me." I sold furniture. I gave some away. Anyway, long story short, he met a woman, and all of a sudden, I started seeing these texts on my phone that, "Hey, why are you looking at my girlfriend this way? Why are you doing this?" And I felt a certain way that I forced myself, and I found a place where I'm at now uh, to move. And I told them, I said, "Listen, I just didn't like the way, you know, how you treated me. I know you for 10+ years. You know this woman 2 years." Anyway, long story short, last summer he came to me and apologized. And I think that's the first time that ever happened that he actually apologized. He said, "I'm so sorry for what happened." And I'm not saying he's 100% in my good graces again, but he's up there in the 90s now. Because I thought that was big
Yeah.
of him, and I felt wow, because he saw what happened. Because I did bring it up to him, and he says, Dude, I'm so sorry." But again, he had said that previously, but I didn't take it seriously.
It
But then,
wasn't sincere. It didn't feel
right,
like a genuine
yes,
apology.
and then last summer when he actually, like, he even gave me, the bro hug, and I said, "Cool," and I felt a certain way. I'm like, "Okay, wow," he apologized, and so it changed our relationship back to almost like 90% positive. I still
Yeah.
hold a little grudge. I hate to say it, but it's funny because we talked yesterday and it was a good conversation.
Nice.
But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm just saying, Julie, that I think if someone comes to you and apologizes, if they're self aware, can that change the dynamics of the relationship? Not saying go back to how it was, but can it get close to that, if that makes sense?
Oh, it absolutely does. And I agree with you. And so for me, I would have the same view you did. You know what? We can be friends, but for me, that trust was broken.
Yeah.
And so I don't think that can ever be mended. Again, it really depends on the what happened, the situation. I think you can rekindle a friendship, but I think there's always going to be that little bit of hesitation. And I think that's a healthy thing, right? Because you don't want to be hurt again, you don't want to be compromised again, whatever it is.
Yeah, no, and it's a good it's a great point you made, to be compromised again. So yeah, so definitely, like with him, I'm cautious, but at the same time, like I said, I thought it was big of him to apologize, and I felt a certain way again. I'm like, okay, he was aware of what happened. So now you moving forward in a relationship, and you see your partner all of a sudden acting strangely. uh th- they're not as loving as they once were. How do we declutter that? Does that make sense? Because now we're talking about personal relationship, someone that either you live with or someone you're dating, but you stay in each other's places on time to time. Now we talk about like a personal relationship. How does that uh, uh, manifest itself to being decluttered?
Sure. Well, the first thing I'd say is to remember what other people do and say is about them,
Okay.
and how you respond is about you. So it seems that a lot of us, and I say we weren't taught these skills. We're taught reading and writing and arithmetic in school. We aren't taught personal growth or how to be in a healthy relationship or what that looks like or how to navigate when things are challenging. So the first thing is I encourage people, get curious. Don't come up from a place of judgment. Try to put your baggage aside. Hey, is there something going on? I've noticed that you aren't as affectionate as you normally are. Are you okay? Like, are you feeling okay? Are you physically all right? Are you stressed at work? Like, come from a place of trying to understand more and see what they say. If you come from that place, someone is more likely to open up and talk to you instead of being like, what the hell's wrong with you? Or, coming from a place of defense or attack. and then start the conversation and see how it goes. Maybe they do want to break up with you, but maybe they're really stressed out and they're trying to figure it out on their own and they're trying not to stress you out as well.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just asking. I don't think a lot of us do that. We just assume the worst without asking because they could be
Mhm.
going through an issue that we don't know, they don't want to tell us about. So that's why we ask. So, Julie, what are some of the like signs that we should be aware of if we're seeing a person that's not uh, I don't want to say at our level, but when you met them, they were, happy, go lucky, but then all of a sudden 6 months later, now they're, eh, leveling off on the happiness and all that. Is there things that we should look for? Any signs that we should be aware of? And if so, then what should we do to, I guess, avoid having a prolonged issue of not getting along, and now we're fighting
Sure.
verbally. I should
Yeah, well,
say.
sometimes, people reveal themselves and we're all on our best behavior usually at the beginning of the relationship. So again, just pay attention. What are they saying? Do their actions match their words? How do I feel when I'm around them? Or if you notice all the time, wow, I notice every time I hang out with Bill, he's complaining all the time. Ugh, you know what? I don't like that. I want to support him, but I feel like I will say, hey, have you tried this? And he always dismisses it or brushes it off, right? Are they receptive? Or do they support me? Is it always about them when we're hanging out, right? Just really cueing in to what are they saying, what are they doing, and how do I feel?
It's always just being aware of like I said, that the surroundings you're in,
Hmm.
but it's how they make you feel. If they make you, because if they're complaining about a little bit about everything, then you like feeling a certain way. I'm like, oh boy. Then I guess you broach the subject by saying, hey, everything okay? What's going on? I know this, but is there a way to say it without offending them?
Sure. Well, we mean say like in the instance of complaining, you
Yeah,
know what, Bill? I've noticed that every time we hang out that you complain a lot. Are you aware of that? I mean,
yeah.
I remember once when Facebook started, or well, when I got on it, I wasn't there at the beginning, and someone said, "You know what? I noticed a lot of your posts are negative." And I was like, "No, they aren't." And then I went back and looked and I was like, "Oh my gosh, they're right." And I just wasn't aware of it. Didn't make me a bad person, but I was like, "Wow, I had no idea." And I believe awareness plus action equals change. So you can say something in a kind way and say, "Hey, are you aware?" And Bill just honestly, like me, might not have been aware. Right. And then what do they do with that? Like, I'm always fascinated by social media and I like to read energy and watch social media and watch people interact and see what happens. And I'm in a group and it's been years now, I'd say 5 or 6 years, and this woman consistently complains and she's always like, I'm a loser, I can't do this right. And I'll never forget someone in couldn't have been more kind and said, you know what, I noticed you do this and I'm really concerned. And the woman went crazy, right? Because if she's doing that all the time, that allows her to play the victim. That allows her to be woe is me. And when someone was like, hey, and or if people in the post would say, hey, why don't you try this or offer suggestions, she'd always poo-poo why it couldn't happen. And so this person just that's her MO. She wants to remain the victim. Maybe one day she'll be like, you know what, I'm ready to change. I want to be happier. I want to embrace life, whatever it is. But she has to come to that decision. But you can say things in a kind way and people either be receptive like I was, or they won't. And then you can make your decision. You know what, Bill, I really like you, but every time we hang out, you complain and I can't do it. I had to say that to a good friend of mine and we didn't talk for 6 months until he needed him to figure it out and do some self-examination. He came back and he's like, you were right. And I said, it's okay, there's no right or wrong here, but I just can't handle the constant negativity. And so when he was around me, he switched it.
Yeah, I think it's. I love what you said. Being aware, and even as the friend, just being aware. Like, wow, this guy's always complaining and all that. What's going on? I love that. First of all, we're talking with Julie Caraccio, clutter in a relationship, or we like to say declutter.
Mhm.
So, um, so when you, I want to talk about your coaching in a minute. I think the biggest thing is, and I like what you said, is just being aware. But some people don't have that. Then do we rely on someone else to tell us then?
Well, then that's, you can have that aha moment. Like I'll never
Right.
forget I have a brother that's much younger, and he one day said to me, "You see yourself as a victim." And I heard him. I'm like, "Hmm, how does that feel? Does that feel right?" And I was like, "Oh, you know what? I think there's some truth in there. Let me go explore this more." In that moment, I was open to hearing, right? So I think that one, you have to be open to hearing, because there are definitely people who are going to tell us stuff that they're projecting or it's their own issue. It has nothing to do with us. So that's when you step back and become like an archaeologist and try and do self-discovery. Let me get neutral. How does that feel to me? Does that feel right? Oh yeah, I do feel like I am a victim, right? And then, well, okay, what do I do? And then you start that path of exploration. Maybe you listen to podcasts on dating. Maybe you watch a YouTube video. Maybe you get a book, right? And so that you begin that journey, or you work with a coach to have some neutral party say, hey, maybe you're not aware of this. And let's dig a little deeper. Why is it you're so negative, right? And
Yeah.
so it has to begin with having an open heart, and I believe an open mind, to be wanting to change. And for some people, they have to hit rock bottom or just have to be so unhappy before they're able to take that first step. And there's no right or wrong, there's no judgment with that. But sometimes it takes something or a big event to make people realize, oh, I'm not happy, what can I do to change?
Yeah, no, I think, well, definitely hit it on the head. I think it has to be something that you just one day you're home and you go, my God, what am I doing? Why is this happening? And I did that years ago with relationships because I felt I was sabotaging them, but it was something that I became aware of, and then I sought help, like you said,
Mhm.
podcasts, books, and all that. First of all, Julie, I want to thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I really appreciate it. Before I let you go, talk more about your podcast. You have a podcast, am I? And yeah, talk more about it.
Sure. It's called Clear Your Clutter Inside and Out. Now, I stopped it, but I have a decade's worth of episodes,
Oh wow,
almost
okay.
550 episodes, where it's still on iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts, and it's also on YouTube. I did video as well.
Okay, sounds good. And talk more about your coaching and
So, yeah, if you're
yeah.
looking to declutter your life, obviously, I look at it holistically. It's one of my favorite things to do. You have the wisdom within. I look at my job as supporting you to bring that to the surface. And I offer a free 15-minute consultation to make sure we're a good match and that I can support you.
All right, sounds good. Anything else you would like to talk about or promote?
No, well, thank you. If they go to reawakenyourbrilliance.com, you can sign up for my free newsletter and get 10 tips to declutter your life right now, and find my books, affirmation, and classes and all that good stuff at reawakenyourbrilliance.com.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely put it on the show notes. Well, first of all, again, Julie, thank you so much for being on People on Dating. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yep, my pleasure. Bye bye.